All right, welcome everybody. I'm Jeff Richardson, Director of Product Marketing. I'll be moderating today's webinar. We'll get started here in just a moment. Give a little time for folks to join. Be sure to check out the chat. Our very own Matt Goodrich is in there. Let us know where you're joining from, what the weather's like where you're at. We're getting sunnier up here in the Pacific Northwest. The temperature's climbing, it gets lighter later every day. So the dark winter is behind us as we jump into spring here, which is a really nice thing. Let's see here. So who do we have here with us? Awesome. Yeah, welcome. Jump into the chat, say hello. And I'm going to jump into announcements. And Leslie from LA, welcome. So today we're going to be talking about Firebase Dynamic Links. Most of you here are probably aware of what those are and might still be using them in active projects. We're going to talk about really migration crunch time because deprecation is coming up August 25th. So we have some great experts from our team here that will dive into topics around migration planning, best practices, tips, all sorts of things. Before I introduce our speakers, I'm going to jump into announcements. So one, I've already mentioned, connect with us through the chat. Matt from our team is in there. We've got John from Texas. Welcome, sunny, I'm sure, and warm. That's awesome. Also, questions. We love your questions. So up in the right of your screen, you'll see a Q&A tab. That's where you can ask questions for our speakers. We will try and get to as many of those as possible. So please be sure to put them in there. If you do happen to put them in the chat, Matt will move them over for us. So we'll get them either way. If we don't get to questions, we'll follow up with you after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it again. We'll send a link out tomorrow. And then even about an hour after the webinar is over, if you click the link you used to join live, that will also let you watch it on demand right through our webinar platform. We do have several resources in our docs tab, which is also up near the Q&A. So be sure to check those out. We'll be referring to those throughout the webinar. And then continue the discussion with us online. Follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on X, wherever we have our social profiles. So let's go ahead at this point and introduce our speakers. So I'm going to bring them up onto the stage here to join me, and we'll have each of them say hello and introduce themselves. So let's see, we've got Jacob, James, and Jasmine. And it's we didn't intentionally plan that all of us would have names starting with J, but it just so happened that was the case. So let's start with the order on the screen. And James, let's have you introduce yourself first, and then we'll go from left to right.
Excellent, thanks, Jeff. Hi, everyone. I'm James Benoit. I run sales engineering here at Kochava. So supporting our revenue team in all things technical related to the products that we have. I've been with the company just over 11 years, so long time. I've worn a lot of hats, but I'm excited to be here to talk about dynamic links with you today.
Hear, hear.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine Graywall. I'm the sales director here at Kochava for our MMP solution. Not been here quite as long as James, but I'm excited to be here. Have been in the industry for about 10 plus years and really excited to be here as you guys go through this migration process. So happy to help.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jacob Manfred. I am the manager of client onboarding at Kochava. I've been with the company for about 3.5 years, and our team specializes in helping any new customers get up and running with our full product suite. So we've been working really closely over the last couple of years with a lot of folks who are interested in finding a new alternative to the Firebase Dynamic Links solution. So I'm excited to talk about it with you all today.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thanks for joining, Jacob, Jasmine, James. And again, I introduced myself at the outset, but some folks have joined since. So Jeff Richardson, Director of Product Marketing here at Kochava. And I actually joined Kochava in 2016, so the same year that Firebase Dynamic Links were introduced, ironically. So obviously the industry has evolved significantly since then. We're going to jump in to the topic here, but real quick, just for anybody that doesn't know who Kochava is, maybe this is your first time hearing about us. Way back in 2011, Kochava was founded, one of the first mobile measurement partners, MMPs. Since then, it's not just mobile that we measure anymore. We measure across all omni-channel devices, or I guess all different platforms across all different channels, whether that be mobile, connected TV, affiliate, influencer. So we started there. We haven't stopped there. In addition, You have probably seen information out there that we are also in the marketing mix modeling space as well, with a SaaS-based MMM platform on the market to bring really last touch attribution together with marketing mix modeling as a future-proof, privacy durable form of measurement. And then in addition to that, last but not least, we also have a search ads automation platform that helps folks optimize and automate their campaign management on Apple search ads and in the future, other search platforms. So if you're new to Kochava, that's a quick backdrop. If you have more questions, get in touch with us after the webinar if you have interest in any of those categories. So for our discussion today, we are going to do a quick background on FDL, so Firebase Dynamic Links. You'll probably hear us use that acronym again and again, so that's what we mean by that. And we're going to talk about background and the reasons for deprecation. Then we're going to talk about FDL alternative options, specifically with Kochava, and then migration planning best practices. And then lastly, opportunities to think about as you're making this transition. You have to move anyway, and it's a moment in time where there's some opportunities you could take advantage of because you have to do work anyway. So we'll dive through a number of those. As we do that, I'm going to launch our first poll. So if you go over and look in your sidebar tab up there on the right near Docs and Q&A, you'll see that we just launched a poll. Jump in and vote on that if you can. That gives us some helpful intel on where you sit in terms of existing projects still using Firebase Dynamic Links. And as we're letting folks vote on that, I want to just jump into our background on FDL. So James, probably lean on you and Jacob on this one, but can you just give us a quick backdrop on Firebase Dynamic Links?
Yeah, for sure. So, assuming most of the folks who've joined the webinar today are somewhat familiar, but as Jeff mentioned a second ago, Firebase Dynamic Links was originally released around about 2016 by Google, just because they recognized that through their providing, the Firebase toolset to app developers, that there was a need for developers to be able to give their users the correct experience. And a lot of times the way that manifests is they're presenting a user with a call to action. And of course, they want to make sure that users who already have that developer's app installed are sent directly to that app and have a streamlined experience. And so as marketers are using dynamic links, it's really just comes down to all of the different advertising strategies that they've deployed in the market, and ensuring that they're able to give users the correct experience depending on whether they're non-existing users of the app or they're existing users and should be deep linked into a specific place within a given application that is maybe related to the call to action on the ad that they engaged with.
Yeah. And what are some of the key reasons for deprecation? Because obviously Google's a massive company. And this is a solution that's been out for essentially 9 years at this point. What do you think are some of the key reasons why they deprecated it? And it's, I think, 2023 is when they announced it. So we're in 2025 now. It's been a while. But any key thoughts on that? And I'll open that up to all three of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the FDL solution has been in the industry for quite a while, and it's something that Google's maintained for a very long time. In the process of its lifespan, it has, or a lot of the first-party platforms, mainly the OS providers, so iOS and then Android, have provided in-house solutions through things like app links, universal links, app clips, and instant apps, which provide an extremely seamless, deep linking user experience. And they can operate outside of third-party solutions like FDL. And so Google, kind of through this rise of additional first-party solutions, has decided to kind of transition their resources away from supporting Firebase Dynamic Links and focus on some of their other measurement products.
Yep. I'm going to bring up to our poll results. So it looks like about 80% of the audience that has participated in the poll still have active projects running on Firebase Dynamic Links. And and that's increased a little bit too. Whenever we put the poll up on the screen, usually that prompts a few more to vote. So yeah, I will keep this open in the background. And if you haven't voted yet, please do so. So I'll just stop sharing that on screen at the moment. So if we think about, you're still on FDL and April 25th rolls around, Google has stamped in very clearly what will happen on that date. So this is, just pulled from their site. But obviously, any sort of deep linking instances are going to break customer experience. So it'll just get a 404, not the broken pencil here. That's just an image example. But and then in addition, obviously, any API, there's the short links API and the link stats API. Those will return error codes as well. So I mean, everything will stop functioning on August 25th. Anybody who's still on has to migrate before that date. And I think maybe you can comment, Jacob and James and Andrew, Jasmine. I know we've already helped a number of different companies migrate off of Firebase onto our solution, Kochava Smart Links. But what is a good time frame to think about in terms of minimum time you need to make this transition carefully and correctly so that you don't break customer experience on the cutover from FDL to your new solution? Is it a week? Is it a month? As much time as possible?
Yeah, I think as much time as possible is the easy answer, but I think really it's a function of how deeply embedded is Firebase Dynamic Links in your marketing strategy, i.e. how many links do you have out there in the wild? If you really only have maybe a dozen or two dynamic links, you could probably get away with transitioning over a shorter period of time. But I know in my experience, we've talked to marketers who have literally thousands of these links deployed in the wild, in which case, the migration to a new solution where they're literally swapping out the links, they're using a new domain, they're using a new service to resolve users to these deep link destinations. It's critical to start planning now, really, and ensuring that you leave enough time to onboard the new solution. Take survey of the number of links in all the places you have these links deployed. Yeah. Plan, maybe a phased approach in how you're going to move off of Firebase Dynamic Links between now and the middle or the end of August. And then, of course, allow for ample time to test, because, of course, anytime you're moving to a new technology, there's an important validation step, because, deep linking is a really, really critical part of marketing in general, especially when we talk about apps, because when you break a user experience, the churn rate when a user has a bad experience, they hit a link, they don't go to where they expected, it can have a catastrophic effect on retention rates and conversion rates, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And one thing I would add to that as well is, and I'm sure plenty of folks in the audience can relate to, is Firebase linking has been around for so long that it might be a project that your team has inherited as you move into different roles and things like that. And so I would make sure to include extra time, if it's a project you've inherited, to understand where these links are being used, because you might not always know. And so making sure that you're giving yourself a couple of days to understand where links are placed. Maybe there's one out there in the wild that's a major function of your website that needs to be swapped as part of the migration, and you don't want to impact that user experience starting on the 25th.
Yeah. Well, let's give jump into just quick backdrop on Kochava. I know that we are one of the listed FDL alternatives on Google's support site for Firebase Dynamic Links, but maybe Jasmine, James, you could give a quick backdrop of just Kochava Smart Links, what it is, and we'll go cover a few options. Then we'll talk in depth about migration planning, best practices, and things to watch out for.
Yeah, thank you. So just like you mentioned, Jeff, you'll see that Kochava was mentioned by Google on their links help page as an alternative solution. Our product, which we call Smart Links, performs the same function as Dynamic Links when it comes to routing users to the right destinations across platforms and devices, and added benefits of an MMP, a mobile measurement partner. You can get more granular, more flexible with your use cases. We have universal link support as well as deferred and deep linking support. One of the key features of our Smart Links is it is a multi-platform support. So you can create a single unified URL configured for iOS, Android, web, or any platform the user is engaging in. With routing rules set up behind the link, Kochava will detect the user's environment and direct them accordingly, whether that's deep into the app or the appropriate app store, or just a fallback to the web page for all the single call to action. We also support customized branded subdomains. And like we've mentioned, we've actually been around with our solution for smart links for about 10 years now. So this isn't something we created for replacement for FDL. This actually started in 2015 and we released it around 2016. And we've adapted many different changes over the years, powering deep linking and streamlined customer experiences for some of the biggest brands in the world, which include, Jamba Juice, Cinnabon, Univision, and many more.
Yeah. I should note as well that, I think one of the things that comes up sometimes in the sales cycle, especially if you're a smaller company, is, Firebase Dynamic Links was a free solution. So Smart Links is available in a free kind of FDL alternative. Get in touch with us for specific questions around feature differences between our free plan versus a kind of a more paid alternative. It does support up to 10,000 attributed conversions per month. We could explain more detail on what that means. It's not charged per click. And then we have paid options as well. So in the docs tab as well, feel free to check this out. You can open the link now and then browse it further after the webinar. But there is a full, essentially, migration checklist of what the process would look like to migrate from FDL specifically to Kochava Smart Links as one of Google's listed FDL alternatives. And we already covered, Jasmine, you mentioned some of the features. We have kind of a full listing on this slide here. Is there anything else, James or Jacob, that you would call out that would be an important kind of foundational feature?
Yeah, I think one thing I would, and I think it's probably listed on this slide, but one thing I would shed light on is just that, linking is something that we as a measurement platform have really always done, even before Smart Links existed, because, as we're performing the measurement services that our platform is really built to perform, we're in a lot of cases, whenever a click occurs, we're handling a redirect, sending a user onto their destination. Smart Links are sort of the evolution of our handling of that user experience. And like Jasmine mentioned, supporting universal linking, app linking, deferred deep linking, but really backing it all up with really granular measurement. And so that's something that, gets a little bit into the technical weeds, but when you talk about the new frameworks for deep linking, which are universal links and app links, there isn't necessarily a click event that's technically taking place. And our platform sort of allows for there to be a sort of manifestation of a click that takes place that is then attributable in reporting, so that you have really, really granular insights into how all of your links are performing across all the calls to action you have out there in the wild.
Yeah. And I'm going to launch, I already launched in the background, but I'm going to share our second poll. And if you haven't voted already, feel free to do so. This is really about how many links you have on FDL presently that are in need of migration. I think James and Jacob, I think you shared some anecdotes that you've worked with some companies that have thousands of links, and there are others that might be in the hundreds. And there's always, we'll talk about scalability of migration that's dependent on the onboarding tools here as part of our kind of migration plan best practices. It looks like we have some folks that are on the lower end, the 50 to 100, some between the 100 to 500, and then others that are between that 5 to 10K range, which obviously that's a lot of links. So if you are in that position where you're dealing with many thousands, we empathize with you. So we understand that's quite a feat and a challenge, but there are some ways to help scalably make the migration. We'll talk about that here in a sec. So I will leave this poll still open in the background. And if you haven't voted already, please feel free to do so. I think at this point, I really want to jump into the different best practices that the three of you have really kind of gathered from working with a number of different companies at this point on this switch. So I've got some slides here that will help us, I think, because there's a lot of meat on the bone here. So let's start with just at this point, the step one here of ensuring backward compatibility with your customer experiences. And I think I had CX on an earlier slide, which is an acronym for customer experience. So let's see, let's just start unpacking these, and I'll let you popcorn style. Feel free to jump on whichever one of these you want to take, Jacob, Jasmine, and James.
Yeah, Absolutely happy to jump in here. So, just like I was mentioning before, this might have been a project that you've inherited, so you don't know what all links are out there. And so, a great way to start and a great way to see what links are active being clicked on, what are your highest traffic links, is use the Google Analytics dashboard. So, take inventory of what links are getting the most interactions. Where do you see kind of some very frequent user journeys happening? Because you might have an inventory of all the links on the website, but then what if there's something in a news article or something posted kind of out there in the wild that you don't always know is being actively clicked on? And so looking at the active traffic that's coming in from your links is a great spot. Secondly, Google does offer a API to pull, or a tool to pull out all of your existing FDLs and all the associated metadata. So you can view all the destinations for all the links. It's a great tool for helping to make the switch over to a new provider as well, because you'll have a raw sheet that contains all of your links with all the destinations that can be uploaded or sent over to the new provider. That I think some links to that is also included in the checklist that Jeff and the team put together. So feel free to give that a review.
And this is a great one, given a question that just came in from Marius in terms of assessing and vetting FDL alternatives. So yeah, Kochava is listed, as well as a number of other solutions on their support article. And I'll share the question here just so you can see it visibly. So we'll go through some actual key talking points that'll kind of be the questions you should ask, whether you're looking at us or any of the other providers that Google listed. And there are some different features and corner cases and things like that. Really, I think it would go back to point one, which is understand your existing deep links and all the customer experiences that you've built behind them, and then vet that with that provider and make sure they can support those. That's probably your best bet to make sure you land on the provider that's going to give you the closest parity to existing FDL functionality, or in some cases, we can even improve on that. So as we're talking about assessing and vetting FDL alternatives, one is pricing structure. Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah, so since Firebase was a free product, you probably haven't been considering paying for this before. So, just understanding that pricing structure is going to be really important. And each company has just a little different way of doing that. So when you're talking to other providers, you want to understand, what's the model like? Is this going to be charged per click? Is it based off of conversion, or is it going to be off of monthly active users? And just really understanding those conversion volumes, click volumes, and active user volumes. If you're charged per click, review your current click volume to project those terms and costs. Something else that we see a lot of times is adjustable rates, where it'll be free for now, but it'll be a large cost later on. We see this happening very often with some of our, with the market, where we have customers coming to us very frustrated with the overages that they've endured that they weren't planning on having because it was free. And then there was just like certain ways where they were able to get them on overages. Something else that I would be aware of is, are there any limitations on how many links you can make or how long those links can last? With Kochava, we do not have limitations along with any time limitations on the links as well. So those are just some things I would be addressing when I'm looking at this.
Yeah, and I think I remember a use case specifically. It wasn't related to this moment in time around FDL, but it was another customer that we onboarded when I was in client success management, and QR codes was something they used a lot of, and a big pain point was expiration of the QR codes and the link structure behind them, and so that was obviously manifested in reprint costs. So that it is you wouldn't think someone would archive your links automatically, but there are certain platforms that will do that after a certain period of time. Meaning, if you've used them for any print applications, you've got to reprint with new QR codes that have new links behind them. So another item is really limitations, which kind of is a little bit about pricing, but also just it could be platform limitations. So can we unpack this one as well?
Yeah, I'll jump in there on limitations, and I think pass off to Jacob for some more more depth on the topic, but I think we've mentioned a lot of the limitations that you should be aware of, or at least things that could hamper your ability to really scale with the new technology provider that you choose to replace Firebase Dynamic Links. Like we mentioned in the beginning, when you're planning a migration, whether you have a dozen links or you have 10,000 links out there, testing is going to be really important. I mean, it's important anytime you're onboarding a new technology provider for something like this that has such an outward facing or direct impact on your user base. Testing is really important, ensuring that your provider that you choose allows for ample testing. So at Kochava, what I'll mention, just to kind of plug our solution here, is for any sort of any technology that we provide, smart links included, the deep linking for deep linking, we provide sandbox testing environments directly in your account. And what that means is you can effectively generate, deploy, and test our smart linking solution end to end in an environment that's not going to sort of put data into your production with your production app, muddying the waters between what was testing data, what was production data. We provide that sort of sandbox testing environment to really put this thing through its paces before you actually go live and put customers against the new links that you've deployed. So that's something that's really important to pay attention to, just because testing is something that's this important and this outward facing, you really want to make sure is buttoned up before it's actually set live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And
Jacob?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just like James mentioned, we do offer the testing platforms or the sandbox platforms for all the customers. And so you'll be given your standard, your new standard SmartLink domain, but then we can also generate a test one that can be used for all of your test apps as well, and host various association files to ensure that universal and app link supported across both platforms as well. Some other things in terms of the onboarding capabilities that you'll want to consider is how easy will it be to move all of the links over from Firebase onto your new provider. So one of the things that Kochava offers, and we've worked with a couple of customers on, is supporting the migration guide to our links API. So we have a standalone API that's supported for basically generating smart links. And you can use that export that you get from the Firebase dashboard, and with a little bit of tweaking, we can send it up to the API, and you can programmatically recreate all of your links within Kochava.
Yeah, and I just launched our final poll for today. So jump into the polls tab if you can. This one is asking if you have developer resources to help aid and automate your migration. It kind of goes to that final, question, whether an API is available. There would be some effort, right, that a developer would greatly assist with. If you're dealing with like 50 to 100 links, like we have a dashboard, you can go in and recreate them right through the user interface. But if you're dealing with thousands, you probably don't want to do it that way. And that's where an API is a much more scalable solution. And so having any developer resources within your team, or whether it might be outsourced, as well, would be something to think about and be aware of, because you might need it. And it looks like right now we've got about 2/3 that say yes, 1/3 no. So if you're in that no category, a big question is how many links do you have? Because I think the no is not as big of an issue if you have 50 to 100, or even maybe 150, 200 links. It only becomes more of a question mark, I think, when you get to the higher quantity of links that you need to migrate over. So I will leave that poll open in the background. If you haven't voted on that one yet, feel free to jump in. And then we've already discussed this somewhat, but I guess just fundamental features. It goes back to that question from Marius as well. But obviously FDL, Firebase Dynamic Links, had some important foundational features. So there's just achieving parity there, but then there's also some potential net new features you're going to gain access to, which we'll talk about more up here soon in our opportunities section. But can you walk through just fundamental features that need to be in place for it to be an FDL alternative?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So, multi-platform handling is of course table stakes here. So support for iOS, for Android, and even for web. So in our experience, when someone deploys a smart link, the kind of hallmark of a smart link is you set the routing rules up behind the link, but it's a single link that works across all platforms. So because if you're sending out an email blast campaign, for example, you don't know if someone's going to be on their mobile device, a tablet, perhaps a laptop when they hit that link. And of course, someone on a laptop's not going to be deep linked into an app. You're going to want to send them to a web page or a landing page, for example. So ensuring that the solution you choose has support for all of the platforms, or really all the digital environments where your product is available. Support for deep linking, of course, iOS, universal links, Android app links. Again, that's sort of table stakes, the price of entry, that should absolutely be supported. And then contextual and dynamic deep linking, or also deferred deep linking, I guess I would throw in there, is the ability to facilitate custom first-time launch experiences with your users. So you do a promotion, user taps on the ad, they don't have the app installed, they go install the app, you want to deep link them subsequently into the specific place in the app that's relevant to the call to action that they engaged with. Dynamic deep linking is an interesting one. This is something we definitely provide, but the ability to dynamically customize the deep link URI associated with the smart link based on maybe a product ID that's been passed through from the initial ad engagement into the deep link. That's something that Kochava supports, and is really something that we see as an opportunity to allow those folks out there that have maybe thousands of these links deployed. Our ability to do this dynamic deep linking, where we're passing parameters through into the deep link that's then passed to the app that the user can then be resolved to, really allows you to cut down on the total number of links that you really have to deploy, which just cuts down on the operational overhead associated with maintaining a solution like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a great question that came in from I think it's either Gal or Gall. For deferred deep linking, do you do any validation on tokens on devices on iOS or Android? I know we have install verification, a number of different things. Can you speak to that, James or Jacob?
Yeah, absolutely. So on top of install verification, and this kind of ties into the last bullet there too, with analytics and reporting, is fundamentally Kochava is an attribution platform. And so that is one of kind of the bread and butter pieces of moving to an MMP solution for your linking, is that you're going to get extremely granular install and conversion reporting. And so part of the basic features of our SDK is that we will collect App Store install receipts. And so we'll have validation on all of those devices, especially for deferred deep linking, since that takes place on a user's first launch into your app. We'll be making that request to the App Store, getting those receipts, and we can fully validate them.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks for the question, Gal. Well, and actually, as we jump into some of those opportunities that we have at this moment, or that you have, right? If you're moving from Firebase Dynamic Links, I think most of the reporting, if not all of the reporting through Google Analytics, is aggregate. It's not any sort of granular row level detail, and so that is something that is an opportunity to take advantage of in this moment. I'm thinking most of the solutions out there that are listed do the same thing, but there might be other solutions that Google has not listed that you're looking at that, again, may have that aggregate reporting. So in terms of, that's kind of bullet one on opportunities. We've already talked a bit about MMP integrations, but maybe each of you can kind of take turns elaborating on some of these points, because as an MMP, with the integrations we have, Google is one of those integrations for Google Ads. And I'm going to find a question we got from registration, and I'll put it in the chat here. But Jacob, James, Jasmine, can you kind of peel off on some of these bullets here in terms of what opportunities you've helped companies that have made the switch over take advantage of?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a consolidation piece that can occur here as well, because we are integrated with thousands of different ad networks and DSPs across the ecosystem. And so not only will you see reporting for those active paid campaigns, but then through the inclusion of smart links, you can also see all of your own media efforts. So any sort of new users that are coming through your website, maybe your emails where you have other FDL links in place, we'll be able to consolidate that in the platform, and you get a really even comparison of your own media efforts next to your paid ones. And then I'll let Jasmine and James jump in with any other details on here as well.
Yeah, on that third bullet, this one's a pretty interesting one, and I think it speaks to Jacob's comment earlier, which was perfect, which is that at our core, Kochava is an attribution platform. And we built tools like smart links to enable developers to kind of control user experience, and then of course have all the attribution reporting on the back end of campaigns that are run. But when it comes to the attribution controls, and this gets a little bit into the weeds, but it's a really interesting dynamic that we facilitate, which is the balanced paid and owned media. So traditionally, smart links can be deployed in email and push, calls to action on one's website, really anywhere, organic social, really anywhere there's a digital touch point with an end user. And traditionally, in those owned media applications, when it comes to how the measurement is performed in the background against that type of traffic, it's typically modeled, or it's typically probabilistic. And a marketer might be using our platform to measure all of their paid media as well. And all of that traffic is getting measured together, and they're able to gauge effectiveness of the ads that they have out there in the wild. Well, paid media, a lot of those channels, whether, a lot of it's in-app, a lot of it's social, occupies a deterministic tier of the waterfall, which means that just by virtue of the way the system handles traffic by default, is deterministic traffic gets prioritized over probabilistic or modeled attribution traffic, which means that your owned media can get devalued really when you don't really want it to. You want to be, maybe say the owned media should have an equal footing in the waterfall as your paid media. And we allow for all those sorts of controls to be implemented. So when you generate smart links and you deploy those, with owned media that you're running, again, organic social, email campaigns, calls to action on your website, you can actually control the waterfall in Kochava to say, hey, give my owned media equal footing in the waterfall as my paid media, so that it's not unjustifiably devalued against my paid. And you can have sort of the view that you want to have with respect to the weight that you put on the media that you own and that isn't actually being paid for.
Yeah, and then on the last point too, the streamlining piece, since FDL has been around for so long, this really gives you an opportunity to kind of take a step back and look at your linking strategy and figure out, is this something that is truly working and is efficient for my team? Or is this something that we've just been creating links this way for so long because that's how we did it back in 2016 when we signed up for FDL? And so some of the ways that we've been helping customers really streamline their link inventory is through a solution that we have called Dynamic Macros. So basically allows you to take one single smart link and then route it out to thousands of different pages within your app. So hopefully that really helps with consolidation. I know we have that one vote in the 5,000 to 10,000 category that might be looking at this migration with wide eyes. And so it's definitely something to keep considered, especially as we're looking at different opportunities to kind of consolidate or better streamline your link creation process. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I put this up. This is a chart, if you will. It shows, the user experience on the top versus the background kind of smart links technology at play. But this notion of dynamic macro, in this case, it's like an item ID, or that could be a product ID. You can put that macro into the smart link. And then at that point, whether it's being deployed by a marketer in an email or a text campaign or something where they replace that macro with a SKU number or some sort of identifier that is specific for it. It could be a product, it could be content, so like a streaming application or like music or video entertainment. Really, there's no limit to what that could be used for. But there are specific applications that then allow you to use one link for potentially hundreds, thousands of different destinations. Jacob, is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of adding some experience into this, we were approached by a pretty major app-based retailer about a year ago who was historically running all of their linking through FDL, and they sell almost exclusively all their products through their app. And so they had one link for every single one of their promoted products. And so we're talking tens of thousands of links, all pointing to different products that they were creating pretty much on a daily basis. And so one thing that we really helped work with their team to streamline was making sure that the destinations were all based off of a particular product ID. And so instead of needing to create a new link every single time they needed to promote a new product, all they had to do was take their existing link and just apply their product ID. That could be done either programmatically or just when they're setting up their ad campaign or promoting or pasting the URL. And so that helped them shrink their entire link inventory from this sheet of tens of thousands of links just back down to just probably about 100. So it was a really, really great solution for them.
Yep. And Jasmine, from discussions you've had with folks you've talked to, I know one of the questions that comes up, right, is, okay, where can I use like smart links in terms of whether you think of it like SMS, messaging, or email? Can you speak to the applications that smart links can be used for across both paid and owned media?
Yeah, they can be used on like social media platforms now. They can be used on your website. They can be used on your paid channels as well, on your non-paid channels. So could be used across various different platforms as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. And is there anything else like Jacob, I recall a story, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the Google's sports boxes, or what is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So another client that we worked with had a bunch of links set up for Google One Box, which is basically a real-time linking system. So like in this case, it was a sporting app. And so when you typed a particular game into Google, you were given a preview box showing all of the different platforms that you can view the game on. And for their particular app, they're using smart links to power that. And what they do is they provided one single one box link, and they're using the game ID to deep link all of their customers into their content when they're Googling it. And it's showing up in the one box previews.
Interesting. Yeah. So if you ever have, if I guess the takeaway there is that depending on your application, there's all the ones that we've probably listed on our website and that we can think of, but you'd be surprised that almost every scenario can be accommodated to provide, either a tracking link or obviously physical signage, right? QR codes. There's a built-in QR code generator with smart links. So if you have physical applications or printed mail applications, those can be leveraged as well. Let's see. I want to tackle some questions here. This one came in from Mary during registration. How effective is it using Kochava to track Google Ads, in-app conversion event, or associated events? How do you basically know that the integration is done correctly to avoid conversion mismatch data on both platforms? Also, can Kochava be synced with Firebase to track in-app campaign events? So I will let you three decide who wants to take that one.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. So I'll actually answer the last part of the question first. So yes, Kochava can be synced with Firebase. So we have integration docs on this. Mary, we can follow up with a link specifically, but if you're using the Firebase SDK, it is possible to use that as a mechanism to send your conversion data into Kochava. And then when it comes to our integration with Google Ads, this gets a little bit away from smart linking and Firebase Dynamic Links, but just as a measurement platform, yes, we're fully integrated with Google Ads for app install and post-install event or in-app associated events, post-install event conversion activity. We, along with kind of the rest of our peers in the space, have very deep integrations with Google Ads. So when you're configuring a Google Ads campaign in Kochava, you're inputting what's called a link ID, which is really like an association to your account. And then you're sort of choosing which of your measured events you'd like to pass to Google Ads to elicit an attribution response. And we have mechanisms built in to ensure that there's no sort of platform mismatching taking place. When we send an iOS conversion event to Google to say, hey, do you have a matching click or impression for this conversion that took place? Google Ads will respond to us with a positive response, in which case they're passing us all the campaign metadata, or a negative response, in which case, of course, there wouldn't be. But then we have sort of mechanisms to silo and categorize and report on all of that data in a way that's not, that's not commingling iOS and Android data, for example.
Yeah. There's also some nuance too, right, with traditional network integrations versus self-attributing network integrations with some of the bigger super publishers like a Google and Snapchat and TikTok. operate under. So there's some interesting nuances there that you should be sure to talk with the team about relating to deep linking and deferred deep linking and dynamic deep linking capabilities. In some cases, links aren't used in the same way in those types of platforms, but there's still capabilities that exist through the integrations we have with them. I want to get another question that we had from registration from John. So do I require both Kochava and Firebase to optimize campaigns for down funnel activity?
Yeah, happy to jump in for this one. So when it comes to measuring down funnel activity, and this kind of alludes to James's topic just now, is through the integration with Google Ads, Kochava can actually syndicate our down funnel conversion stream over to Google. And so as an alternative, we can replace that down funnel reporting through the Kochava SDK. So a lot of our customers will use us specifically to syndicate conversion data out to these different publishers. And the great thing about Kochava is that we have integrations with all of the major publishers. And so while Firebase is sending data just directly to Google, Kochava can take the role of sending those conversion events not only to Google, but also to your Facebook campaigns, TikTok campaigns, or any other paid media that you have out there. And so it really helps you kind of consolidate your tech stack. Now, in terms of specific Firebase features where you still might need some support, we kind of discussed this. If you're using things like Pay with Google or maybe sign in with Google as features of your app, those are some things that need to be facilitated through their SDKs. But in terms of just transmitting conversion data for optimizing your campaigns and better reporting, it's definitely doable with just the Kochava SDK, and you don't need to run both.
Yeah, these are great questions. Here's we've got another one from Dumitru. How do you manage iOS pasteboard notifications in relation to deferred links? Additionally, do you have a feature similar to Firebase Dynamic Links that allows for the disabling of pasteboard retrieval options? This might be one that's more technical enough that we want to also just separately, we'll follow up with you, Dumitru. But James, from a sales engineering front, any thoughts here on whether SmartLinks leverages the pasteboard functionality or whether it works outside of that?
Yeah, so this was a design decision that we made some time ago, several years ago, where Kochava does not use the clipboard or the pasteboard to preserve the origination point of a user. And really for the kind of studio audience, what Dimitri is asking here is really has to do with deferred deep linking, because deferred deep linking is, also known as a custom first-time launch experience, is really only possible when you have device level attribution. Whether that was derived deterministically or through a modeled means, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have attribution associated with the device, there can be a deep link URI associated with that campaign, and that can be provided to the app and give that user that experience. There are platforms out there that actually use the clipboard or the pasteboard function within a mobile device to throw something onto the pasteboard or the clipboard that's then preserved, where an SDK can then retrieve it later. For various reasons, we made the decision not to do that. Not to say that might not change in the future, but that's the current kind of position that we've taken on that topic. We sort of just felt that approach wasn't durable from a time continuum perspective. Like we are honestly surprised that it's been allowed to persist, just because it is somewhat of a workaround. But that isn't to say that things won't change in the future, but that's the current state of our position on that feature.
Yeah. No, thank you. We have another question from registration from David, and I'm gonna pop that up here right now as well. So I would like to know more about your tool. Do you have any training available? Is there a way to get a certificate? And this, I believe, if my memory serves me correct, that David was with an advertising agency. So we do have a Kochava authorized partner program that is for agencies. It's free. It has a number of different sessions. We call them discovery sessions on industry topics. Everything from measurement 101 to ad fraud prevention. Deep linking is one of the courses in that as well. So yes, there is essentially a badge that comes with that. So reach out after the webinar, and we'll probably ping you directly as well, and we can get you more details on what that looks like. And there's a whole bunch of nitty-gritty detail around deep linking. There's the very high level, just what is it, and then there's just all this incredible functionality and technicality behind how it operates. So let me go ahead and pull up another question that just came in from Ryan. I'll share that to screen. Besides the difference in conversions per month, can you highlight some major differences and features between the free tier versus the foundation tier? So I assume, yeah, you're talking about the 2 bullets we put up earlier, where we have essentially a free FDL alternative that functions as a replacement, and then a paid version that is more of our fuller MMP offering. So I can speak a little bit to this, and then maybe Jacob, Jasmine, or James, you can jump on. The free version, the attributed conversions is, again, with an MMP, you get attribution built in. So attributed conversions would be installs, so installs of the application, or in any case, if you're running retargeting or re-engagement campaigns, then you might be leveraging a smart link to attribute in-app events to a user that already has your app installed, but you're trying to push them back into the app to engage further, maybe complete a purchase, start a trial, start a subscription. Those would be attributed conversions. So 10,000 a month would be what's included with the free plan. So if you're a smaller app, that might fit you well. If you're a larger app and you think already you've got over 10,000 attributed monthly conversions, then it wouldn't really be the plan for you. But we do have smart links available now, again, in that tool set. So that allows you to create those multi-platform links that are suitable across Android, iOS, and web. And there's not a charge per click on the activity against those. And you can create an app group where you have your iOS app, your Android app, and then a web instance as well. So that you have the destinations you can set for a smart link to route the user based on the device that the smart link detects they're on. We can get into additional kind of almost table comparison if you'd like to. Just follow up with us afterward, and we'll check in with you as well, just to cover bases on any questions and figure out like which one would be a fit for you. Jacob, Jasmine, James, anything you'd add to that?
I would add, yeah, and this gets away from Firebase Dynamic Links or Smart Links, but just a difference to be aware of with the free versus foundation tier is in the free tier, we limit the number of integrations you have access to. So with the free tier, you have access to, Google Ads, TikTok, Meta, X, Snap, if I didn't mention those guys already. Whereas in the foundation tier and sort of all the rest of the tiers, you have access to all of the, 4,500 plus integrations that we maintain as an MMP. So like Jeff said, it's really a function of your size and the kind of the volume that you're pushing, the different, the number of different media sources that you're running with. If you're only running with those major sort of self-attributing platforms, free may be fine. But if you're sort of going programmatic, running with DSPs or direct publishers, ad networks, doing, stuff on CTV, the foundation tier or above would probably make more sense for you.
Yeah. And some that it was in an email, I think, in a follow-up from a registrant, but one person had asked about, hey, I'm thinking, or my company is thinking about building an FDL replacement in-house. And they were asking for guidance on that. Any thoughts that any of you could share on that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a standalone linking perspective, it's definitely a doable solution. Apple and Google both have pretty robust documentation on how to associate specific domains that their team would stand up with your app. That way they're being routed into the app correctly. You'll get universal link, you'll get app link functionality. It's when you get into the reporting and the deferred deep linking piece that can get a little bit more challenging, is because you're going to want to make sure that you're able to see the outcomes of these links and what type of actions are being taken and all those types of things. And so using a provider like an MMP or what FDL was serving in the past is giving you basically visibility into what those links are doing, where the clicks are occurring, how frequently those users are being driven into the app. And so making sure that you have that reportable piece is really something that we'd encourage and it would be a little bit more difficult than just using a already existing provider there. And
Yeah.
James, Jasmine, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would add to that. Seconding everything Jacob just said, but also, bearing in mind, like if you are considering building this yourself and you're using a measurement provider, whether it's Kochava or another, the primary function of our system from a measurement perspective is to measure everything together. So you have your deployment of smart links, your own media being measured against your paid media. And if you're building, your product, your engineering teams are choosing to build a deep linking solution in-house, it's very, very important to keep in mind. It ties into the reporting piece Jacob mentioned, but bearing in mind, what is your plan with respect to measuring your use of these links, perhaps in owned media, against paid media that might be getting measured in a third-party provider like an MMP that you're using? So there's a lot of considerations there. And of course, we would be open to chat with anyone that's thinking about going down that path, because we do have experience with customers who have been there and have probably some learnings we could share.
Yeah. Jasmine, any thoughts at all?
Oh, I think they covered most of the things.
Yeah, kind of been there, done that. And yeah, I think we have seen some companies that did that, and then I think the big thing is something you called out, James, which is just that at that point you're kind of siloed. Maybe you have all your paid media measured through an MMP or a tool like a Google Analytics, but then you're over here with your owned media, and your own media is so incredibly powerful that one of the biggest things that our onboarding team and then our client success managers that work with customers are always asking is, okay, well, are you measuring your owned media? Like, get that plugged in as well. And then you're going to have a much better understanding of organic versus, and organic being like potentially attributed to your own or earned media, separate from just seeing everything as unattributed, that's not attributing to paid. And in some cases, there's some interesting overlap between paid channels and your owned channels, where some of that might be getting cannibalized. And with measuring all of that through one offering, you can adjust those controls to start to fine tune your attribution and get a much clearer picture of the holistic mix across all channels, owned and paid. So we have a couple minutes left. I want to call attention again to the Docs tab. We have some great resources in there. One of the biggest ones, I think, being that FDL migration plan checklist that covers a step-by-step of what it would take to migrate, at least from FDL to Kochava as an alternative, but many of those steps apply regardless. And then also a web page on our site. If you do want to continue the conversation with the team you see here in front of you and would like some more guidance and help on kind of next steps, we're just shy of 4 months until the 25th of August. So get a move on it now. You can click the request consultation button up there in the top of the screen, and we will be sure to reach out and follow up with you afterward. But open them back up to the group. Any final thoughts as we round out the hour here?
I would just say thanks for everyone that joined. Hoping this was useful, and really urging everyone who's using Firebase links today to start thinking about their plan, talking to vendors. We would love to talk to you, of course, but really urging you to get ahead of this. 4 months isn't that much time, especially in the space that we're all in. This industry, things tend to move really fast. Development resources can be scarce. So, start planning early and make sure you choose a provider that's going to check all the boxes for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And echoing James's point, thank you everybody for attending, and please reach out to us with any questions. I think our LinkedIns are available, and then we have a couple of different buttons that you can click to get in touch with our team further. So we'd love to chat with you more. If there's any specific questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending, agreeing with James and Jacob there. Please feel free to reach out, and here to help in any way that you guys need.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. 3 J's. I'm the 4th J for joining today. I don't know if we'll ever have a webinar again where all of our names start with the same letter, but this was fun and informative. So thank you to you three, and thank you to everyone who joined. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Cool.